Hello everyone. I'd like to welcome you to today's webinar, Management Reporter Tips and Tricks. We appreciate the time of you taking the time to join us today. There are a couple of housekeeping items we would like to mention before we begin the presentation. All attendees are in listen-only mode. If you do have any questions throughout the presentation, please either raise your hand so we can unmute you, or you can submit them through the GoToWebinar question box. We will be answering questions throughout the presentation, and we'll also be following up after the presentation to answer any additional questions. I'd like to introduce today's speaker. We have Tina Hare, who is a GP Senior Application Consultant here at Socius. So at this point, Tina, I believe we're ready to transition the presentation over to you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Today we will be talking about Management Reporter Tips and Tricks. The idea of this is to not necessarily teach you how to create reports, but to possibly enhance reports and some additional features and tips and tricks that you may not be aware of. So we're going to talk about some report design, some formatting, report groups and scheduling, report distribution, the web viewer, report security, missing account analysis, and cash flow statements. We're going to start with report design tips and some basic review. As you can see on the screen, we're going to talk about some building block functionality, normal balance, categories, dimension sets, excuse me, adding attributes to our columns, duplicate report or duplicate account reports, excuse me, options and folders. So what I'm going to do now is switch over to Management Reporter and pull up a report that to show you some of these tips and tricks. So I'm in the window and I want to go to the row definition. So I'm going to click the icon to the right of the row definition to open the row definition. As most of you probably are aware, this is where we define account descriptions, accounts, that type of thing for our report. And a couple of things to point out that not everybody either understands or is aware of are just the first piece is the normal balance column. The way the normal balance works is controls the sign of the amount in the row. So if you want to reverse the row or the sign in the row or its normal balance of an account to a credit, you would enter a C. If you want to leave it as a debit balance, then you're going to leave it blank. But just so you know, Management Reporter reverses the sign of all credit balances in the row. So when Management Reporter converts the accounts, it removes the debit credit characteristics from all the accounts. So you want to make sure that depending on how you want to display that account, that you have a C in there. Another piece that I want to talk about, they actually kind of go hand in hand. The next two items, categories and dimension sets. If you're aware of account maintenance in Microsoft Dynamics GP, there is a required field in there called categories. And if those categories are assigned based on how you want to display your financial statement, you can actually use the categories in your report. So if I double-click in one of the fields under column J, which is linked to the financial dimension, and it opens up the dimension window, I see in this case, I have 3 segments to my chart. The fourth column in here is called account category. If I double click on that and click the ellipsis button, I'll see a list of all account categories that are in GP. You can use the account category to build your row definition The advantage to doing that is as you add new accounts and you assign them to the appropriate account category, they will be included in your report. So you will not have to manually go in and add an account to the report if it's using account categories. As most of you know, if you're using the natural accounts, which is what typically is used, and new natural accounts are created, they do have to be manually added to all reports. So if you're using the account categories, your reports are automatically updated. Another feature that's very similar is called dimension sets, dimension value sets. And it is a set of accounts that make up that section. So if I look at this set here, this account set, it's called sales. And if I look at it, I have a range of accounts in here. I can have multiple ranges of accounts in here to include in this set. And the same goes for dimension value sets, that goes for categories. If you use the dimension value sets to create your reports, when you add new accounts, we would add them to the dimension value set, and any report using that dimension value set is included in the report automatically. So if I wanted to add an account, I could simply come in here and then select the appropriate account that I wanted to add. Ways to maintain your reports a little easier than having to manually add accounts. Next, I'm going to move on to how to include attribute columns in your column definition. What attribute accounts are, and I'm going to go to, I'm back at the report definition. I'm going to click on the icon next to column and pull that up. Attributes allows us to include additional information in our column definition that may not, that is outside the normal account balance information. An attribute is one of your column types. If I double click on the column type, attribute is one of the options towards the bottom. If I go down to the next row and double click, I see a list of all possible attributes that can be included in a report. What this allows you to do is include originating master name, such as customer or vendor, originating master document number, such as an invoice number, whether it's from the sales invoice or the payables invoice, as well as transaction descriptions, transaction dates, that type of information, so that when you're generating a report, you've included additional information that might be beneficial to possibly your department managers or people reviewing the report. So what I've done here is I've added the originating master name, which is, like I said, the customer or the vendor. On the one over here, I've added the document number. Then I've added the transaction date, and I included the source document in this also. The reason I did that is in some accounts you can have information coming from multiple modules, and this will tell us whether it was payables, receivables, or another module. Then I have the normal financial dimension column to include the periodic information, and then the year-to-date column. So I'm going to generate this report and show you how that's going to display. The one thing you want to be sure of when you're generating a report that has attributes is that your detail level in your report definition is set to financial, account, and transaction. so that you have the ability to drill into the transaction level of the report, which is where you're going to see the attribute information. So if I look at salary expense here, and I double click it, I'm going to drill into it. And I'm seeing the various divisions within my report. So I'm going to drill into administration, and now I'm going to drill into the account one more time. So what we're seeing happens to be payroll data. I'm going to expand this out. So I'm seeing computer checks, and I'm seeing the name of the person, or in this case, employee, the check number, the transaction date, the source document, and the amount of the transaction. This information can be beneficial to managers as they're possibly maybe looking at their budget information to see what makes that up. I'm going to go down here to, let's try other employee expenses and drill into administration here and then into employee benefits. Same concept here. I'm seeing similar information in regards to the transaction detail that makes up that account. If I look into sales, I have some sales transactions in here, as you can see. And so I see it's a sales transaction entry, who my customer is, the invoice number or the document number, and the transaction date. And when you generate the report, and potentially whether you export it to Excel, whether others are viewing the report through Report Viewer or Web Viewer, they will have all of the detail that you generate to the same level that you generate the report. So they would be able to see the transaction detail as well. The next thing to show you on here is, or the next item on our list is duplicate account report. So in the report definition, under the Output and Distribution tab, there's an option to include report or include duplicate account. If that is marked when you generate the report, you can go, once you've generated the report to the report library, you can click on View and Duplicate Account. And this indicates that I have a duplicate account in here twice, and it tells me the row codes in which I have the account in there. You may have it in there multiple times on purpose, whether you're adding it in somewhere and subtracting it out on another row, or you accidentally just included it twice. So I can go back to my row definition, and it indicated that it was on 520 and 550. So if I go to 520, and it specifically said that it was the 100-5150-00 account. So if I come over to 520, and if I double click here, I can see I have 5150 here, and go down to the next row, which is 550, and open that up, and I can see that I have 5150 here. So then I can decide which row it's supposed to be on and remove it from the other row. It's a way to, when you're building reports, to make sure that you have not duplicated accounts. A little bit later on in the webinar, I'll show you how to look at a missing account report to also manage the report when you're creating it. Another thing that I want to point out is, and this is user-based, so I'm going to go to Tools, Options, and in here, these are user preferences. Just like we have GT user preferences, we also have it in Management Reporter. So when you're in the preference window, you can indicate how you want to see it when you start GP. Do you want to see the last loaded report? Do you want to show open window? Or do you want to show an empty environment? The empty environment is typically what we would see when we launch. This is considered the open or the empty environment. If I had selected the last report and opened it, then my income statement would be open when the next time I open the report, or open management report, excuse me. The next three checkboxes: display confirmation before exiting management reporter. I don't know how many of you have accidentally clicked the X at the very top and closed management reporter without intending to. But if we mark that box and I try to close it, it's going to ask me if I want to close it. And I can simply say yes or no, depending on what I was attempting to do. The next one is automatically apply cell underline and column headers. So when we are adding to our column header here, the underline is automatic. The header is automatically underlined based on the current setting. If I go back to Tools and Report Options, and I unmark to automatically apply the underline, when I enter my next column name, and I open that up, it's not underlined. So as you're building a report, if you don't want the headers and the columns underlined, you can simply unmark that, and they will not be underlined. And then you can control what underline you do want to have on there, or which columns you want to have underlined. The next option is use Management Reporter Report Viewer as a default viewer. If this is marked, then when you generate reports, they're going to drill to the Report Viewer, which is what we were looking at here. This is Report Viewer. If it is unmarked, we're going to use the Web Viewer. And I'm going to leave it unmarked, and the next time we generate a report, it will go to the Web Viewer, and then we will actually be talking more about the Web Viewer a little bit later on. Some other additional default settings is the location of the reports when they're generated. And we'll talk about this in more detail, but you can default this to, in this case, it's going to the report library, and you can indicate a different default location, and then as well change it on individual reports, or just let the default take place. Same way with the report link. If we're exporting a report link of a report to a location for others to view the report, we can define that default report link in here. You do have to use what's called a UNC path, so you might need IT or somebody if you're not sure what that is. When you export files from Management Reporter, you have a default location as to where those reports will automatically be exported. This is a default setting that's installed when Management Reporter is installed. It typically creates a Management Reporter folder under your Documents folder. And obviously that can be changed if you want it to go to a different location. The last option in here is in regards to Excel, and when reports are being exported to Excel. Do you want to display headers and footers in the normal view on the first page only, or do you want to display headers and footers in the page layout view? And I'll show you what that is when we export a report to Excel, but in this case, I'm going to leave it right now at display the headers and footers in a normal view on the first page only. This is a window that, from what I've found, a lot of people aren't aware that it's there. So it's something that you can set is specific to you. You're not affecting other users, just as user preferences in GP. Another thing to point out is the ability to create folders and organize your report building blocks. So these are my report definitions. Currently they are just sitting out there. If I collapse this, they are hidden. I can have unlimited folders in here, so I could create reports and store them by company, by user, by type of report, whatever it works for you and your company. If I go to row definitions, I can do the same thing. So I can have different folders for different types of row definitions to just organize things a little bit and make it a little bit more easier to find some things. So we're going to go back to our slide deck here and continue on with some additional formatting tips. I'm going to show you a function of zero value override, how to remove the day of the week from the header in the report viewer and why it does that. You can add an image to your report, so I'll show you how to do that. You can sort by the natural account for accounts where they are grouped together on one line, as well as some Excel layout defaults. So for the zero value override, and just as a side note, I am using Management Reporter 2012 CU15, which is the latest version of Management Reporter. So some of the options that I show you, you may not have just yet, depending on which CU that you are currently on. If you see a feature that you are looking for and you can't find it, either ask me or get with your lead consultant and we can see about getting you upgraded. But to go back to the zero value override, I'm on the report definition window and I click over on the settings tab, and down here we have a zero value override text field, and you can really put in here whatever you want. I put a dash because that's typically what people ask for when the report is generated and the account does not have a balance. By default, it can display blanks for zero amounts, which is up here, or if I have it unmarked, then I'm going to get a zero. But it's not uncommon for users to want to actually put that dash in there just to say, okay, it's a blank field, and it's a little more noticeable if it's blank if there's just no zeros in there. I even put the word in blank earlier when I was playing with this, and the word blank showed up on my report. So I'm going to leave that dash in there, and I'm going to show you when we generate it how it looks. So I'm going to ask a question. Obviously, it's a little I'm not going to be able to hear the answers, but how many of you noticed that you get the day of the week in the report when you generate it and wonder why it's even there? The reason it's there is if I go over to headers and footers, in our dates function, we typically use the function @dateLong for our dates, which gives us October 31st, 2016. However, because your computer or your system has default dates in there, the long date also has the day of the week in it. So if I click on over to the control panel and I go down to region, I have the long date right here. And it says day, day, month, month, date, and year. So if I drop this down and change it to month, day, and year, it will take away the day of the week in our report. That is something that would have to be done on each computer. So if I do it on mine and then someone else runs the exact same report, but they haven't made that change in the region section, then they will still have the day of the week included in their report. So next we're going to add an image to the report. And we do that in the report definition window under the headers and footers section. I'm going to click over here in the third section, which is going to display on the right side of the page, and I'm going to click Images at the top. Now, I've already added my Celsius image by clicking Add and browsing out to the location. And then when I come in here and I just click Insert, now you see the word logo. And the next time I generate a report, the logo will be there. To be able to sort the counts in natural account order, it's good when you have a group of accounts that make up a line in your row definition, but when you drill into it, you want to see it in account order. So under Settings, there's an other option down at the bottom. If I open that up, I'm going to click on Account and Transaction Detail. And over here on the right, it says Sort by Natural or Main Account. So again, what that means is if I drill into a line that has multiple accounts in it, that's going to make sure that the main account is sorting by main account. Otherwise, sometimes it's hard to find accounts that you're looking for to make sure they're included. Some other options in regards to Excel. If you export your reports to Excel, this will be good to know. So on the Output and Distribution tab, down at the bottom where we have Microsoft Excel options, these are defaults that when we export to Excel, they can be changed. So the first one is include fonts and shading. So if you've done some formatting in your row definition in regards to fonts and shadings, those will be exported to Excel also. Generate to a single worksheet. That would depend on whether you're using a reporting tree, and if you want everything in the reporting tree on one single worksheet, or if you want it in individual tabs, just as if you were drilling into it in the report library. So if it's marked, everything's going to go to one single worksheet. If it's unmarked, everything will go to an individual tab. Include comments, and I will walk you through how to add comments to a report. But if we have comments in a report and we're including them, we can export them to Excel also. Include formulas, which was not there in 3 or 4 versions ago. I couldn't tell you exactly which one. So when you export to Excel, of course, the formula is included. If you make changes within the Excel, it will automatically retotal if the formula is included. The other option that we talked about briefly was the include headers and how you want to see your headers. Again, this is a default and can be changed when it is exported to Excel. So we talked about zero value override, removing the day of the week, adding an image, and sorting by the natural account, as well as some Excel layout. So I am going to generate this report again to show you how some of these changes have affected our report. So here's where we're displaying the dash as opposed to zero. We can obviously leave it blank, have it to zero displayed, or if you want something else displayed, we can include that in the override field in the report definition. Here's my logo that I added. Now I also, just as a side note, this was generated to the web viewer, where earlier I generated a report to the report definition, or the report library. If I were to drill into some of these accounts, it would, even though I only have the one account, they would display in main account order. From the web viewer, I can go to Excel. So I'm going to click the down arrow over here where it says download, and I'm going to select Microsoft Excel. And it's just warning me that it could take a while. I'm going to tell it to open, but come to find out, this server does not have Excel, or yeah, the server does not have Excel on it. So I will not be able to show you the report in Excel. So I apologize for that. And that's what happens when you use an actual GP server for this and Office isn't installed. So I apologize for that. So I'm going to go back over here to our slide deck. And this is just a screenshot of before formatting where you can see things are, here's the day of the week, there's no logo. If I go to the next one, now we have a logo, we've taken the day of the week out, we've added dashes, just to kind of show you some of the things that we can do to dress up a report. All right, so we're going to move on to report groups and scheduling. And we're going to talk about how to create report groups, how to schedule individual reports or report groups, and how we can make sure that all the settings in the report group are the same for all reports. So down here on the left, you'll have report groups and report schedules. Report groups is a group of reports that you want to generate at the same time. I'll double click on my month-end report group. And as you can see, I've added 4 reports. And I'll show you how to create a new one. So if I click on new, it opens the window, and I have my various options that I would see in the report definition window, and I can indicate that I want to override the company detail and data settings that are in the individual report definition to ensure that all reports that I include in my group come out with the same date, for the same company, with the same detail level, that kind of thing. I'm going to change my detail level to financial account and transaction. And I'm going to add a couple of reports. So if I click on add, I can select the report. I can select my cash flow. I can hold my control key down and select my income statement and hold it down again and select the balance sheet. When I click OK, all 3 of them are inserted. And then if I needed to reorder them, I can move them up and down. If I included one that I wanted to remove, I simply highlight it and click remove. I'm going to click the diskette at the top to save it. And I'm going to title it so when I want to run those month-end reports, I can do that from here. To point out a couple of things first, I can do a group distribution, so I might want to put these in a month-end folder in my report library. So I'm going to change my options. So I'm going to go to Tools, Options, and I'm going to mark to use the Report Viewer option instead of the Web Viewer. And if I go out here to where my library is at, I can create a folder I've got a year-end one. If I want a month-end one, I can go to File, File, New Folder, and type month-end. Then, when I'm in my report destination, or the distribution window, I can select that as my destination. If I wanted to go one step further, I could even label the folder September if I wanted to. So when I generate the reports, all 3 reports are going to generate. As you can see, it shows the name of the report group and the 3 individual reports that are being generated. If I go out here to my report library and I expand this out, I need to refresh it. There we go. There's the 3 reports that I just generated. So I can come out here, and if I want to generate these reports, view them, export them to Excel, whatever I want to do at this point, they're all 3 generated at the same time. Okay, so the next thing is just a little bit more about distribution. Well, let's go back to scheduling first. The next step after we generate or create our group is we can actually create a schedule of reports to be generated. So if I click New, it comes up with the settings, very similar, if you will, to a recurrence in Microsoft Outlook. I can schedule an individual report, so any one of my individual reports, or I can do a report group and schedule a report, set a schedule so a report group generates on the frequency that I set. So since these are month-end reports, maybe I want to issue them monthly, and I might want to issue them on a specific day, such as the 20th of the month. I can tell it to do it on a specific day of the week by selecting a day of the week, or if I want it the first or second Sunday, Monday of the month. And then that way, the second Monday of the month, if my statements are supposed to be issued by then, they will automatically be generated, and you can set a time, a date that you want it to start. So if I wanted it to start next Tuesday, or Monday, excuse me, and I wanted them issued and generated at 7 a.m., I can set that up. And then when I save this, again, every second Monday of the month, the reports are going to be generated. You might want to set a report where it's generated, maybe you have a cash report or a sales report or something like that that you need to issue each week, and you want it as on there available to your staff the first, the beginning of Monday. You could schedule a report, and I think I did that with the ratios report, to where I set it to start on Monday at 7 a.m. It's going to go weekly. Every Monday, this report is going to be generated. Depending on how you're generating it and where you're and how you're distributing it, if it's going out to maybe a SharePoint or it's going out to a shared drive where users can access it, and we'll talk about that in a minute, then they could simply go out when they get in on Monday and open the report so that they can review the prior week's sales, cash, whatever you're looking at. Lindsay, do we want to stop for questions?
Sure, we do have a couple. The first one is, can you print a report group to a printer in total, or do you have to open each generated report to print it?
You would open each report individually and generate those.
And then, do you have to have a GP login in order to have a MR login to access WebViewer, specifically being able to send links to reports to managers without GP access?
No, if you are, so in Management Reporter, there's actually 4 types of users. There's an administrator, there's a designer, there's a generator, and a viewer. If you are a viewer, then you do not have a GP login. You do not have to have a GP login to view the reports in WebViewer, excuse me, that could be generated out there. So if you have a generator license, a designer, or an administrator, then you would have to have a GP login to either access Management Reporter, or even if you're just generating reports, you still have to have that GP login.
Okay, and then when I export my reports to Excel, the logo is huge and covers about 32 rows and a few columns. I can easily delete, but how do you get it so it either doesn't show up on the Excel report or it's very small?
If it's included in the report itself when it's generated, it is going to export to Excel. So it might be something that if you know you're going to export to Excel and you're having an issue with it, you may want to remove it. You could potentially re-add it back in Excel. You might see about adjusting the size of it. So in just the file that you've attached to your report. So if I go back over here to report definition and go over to my report that I've been using, under headers and footers, you might remove it from within here if you've added it in here before you push it to Excel. And then potentially when you close this out, as long as you have not made any other changes, just tell it no if it asks you if you want to save it so that your logo is still there. The other option is to open it up in Paint and potentially try and make it smaller so that when you export it out, it's smaller in your output of Excel.
Okay, and then one last one. Let's say you have revenue and CGS with 5 product lines under each one. How do you get the CGS percent by product line without doing the CGS percent on total revenue?
Is there a way I can see the questions?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Maybe we could reach out after the webinar to answer this one?
Yeah, can we do that?
Sure. I'll keep it saved for us.
Thank you.
All right, that's good for now.
Okay, thank you. All right, so we're going to talk a little bit more about report distribution. We've talked about the report library and how we can create folders in here for organizing our reports. We can, within the output and distribution tab, have reports go to a single library, which is what we're doing here. We can have it go to multiple libraries, so if we want a report to show up in multiple folders in a report library, we can insert those here. So if I click select, I can actually see my month-end folder and my year-end folder. So whatever folders I had out here, I could select those. And the reports would be generated in both folders. I also have the option of exporting a report, a link to the report. So especially if I'm going to a web viewer, I can export the report so that users could access it. It does have to be a UNC path, and it does have to be on the Management Reporter server. And because of the type of server I'm on, it will not let me enter a UNC path because of the security on this server. Otherwise, I would show you that. So I would click Browse here and use a UNC path to browse out to where I want to store the link to the report. You can also link to SharePoint. If that's something that you're interested in doing, I suggest that you get with your lead consultant and ask them to work with you on getting it into SharePoint. I can show you, though, in regards to the link for the web viewer. If I open up one of the reports here that I generated, up at the top in Report Library, you see a copy link option. If I copy that link, and I'm going to open up Notepad so you can see it. Here's the link, and this is the link that we would actually send to people, or that they would access from maybe a shared directory. But if I copy that link, I can copy that into an email and send it off. And most of those users are going to open it in Web Viewer. So I'm going to go back to where I'm using the Web Viewer. I'm going to open up this, and it's not going to let me. So I'm going to copy and paste it into my Web Viewer. There it went. Well, that was nice of you. Well, it worked earlier. The report would show up in here. If they clicked on the link, it's going to show it. The user that you're sending it to does have to have a Management Reporter user set up for them, and they have to have that user set up before the report is generated. So if by chance you missed somebody in your distribution and you wanted to send them the report after you added them, you would have to regenerate the report for them to be able to actually view it. But when they view it, it will come up in the Web Viewer. I'm going to go back to something in regards to the group. This is actually pretty cool. In the group that I created, I had 3 reports in there, and I had it going to the Web Viewer. Here are my 3 reports. So the end user, if they open it, they can generate or open the report and see it. If they want to go back to one of the others, they hit the back arrow, and they can view the reports. So it's just kind of a neat little dashboard for them to see all the reports on. Talk a little bit more about just the web viewer. Is obviously, if I had Excel, I could export it to Excel. I can print reports from here, so I have that option of printing. I can zoom, so I can obviously change the size. I can click on Go To, and because I'm doing this based on, this is my cash flow, so I can go to different sections within my cash flow statement. So if I click on Net Cash, it takes me down here, and it highlights that box for me. So for lengthy reports, that could be a benefit when you're trying to find something. I can click on Show, and I can say, only show me summary lines. So it only shows me summaries. It takes out all the detail that makes up the summary. If I go back to Show, I could do charts and comments, which we're going to go back, and I'm going to show you that here in just a moment. So I can do just about everything from the web viewer that I can do from the report viewer. A couple of things to show you on the report viewer. And one of the neatest things is I can create charts and graphs from the data in here. So if I right-click and I say select row or select column, when I do, it makes my icons for my charts available, and I can simply click on column. Now this works well when you have maybe a month-over-month report or a rolling 12-month report. It will chart everything that you select. You can select multiple lines. So if I do these two lines, I'll go all the way down. And I go back to comment or column. I can expand that out. And I'm seeing the chart for September and my year-to-date for those expenses. And here's my color coding for each one of the different expenses. You can pin this over on the right so that it's there. You can also, if you wanted to, copy and paste it out into something else, into Excel or into Word if you try to put together some sort of, report booklet, if you will, and you want your charts in there as opposed to printing on the individual reports. From what I gather, not a whole lot of people use the chart. A lot of users don't even realize that that's an option, or even how to do it. Another thing within the report library that you can do is add comments. So up here on the right, I can do a comment, or I can click up here on my little Post-it note icon, and I can type a comment. When I do, it shows a Post-it note to the side of the line where I posted the note. The nice thing about this is you can copy the comments from different versions or 2 different versions of the report so that you're not constantly adding the same comment over and over to the report. So the way to do that is if we go to the report library, and this may not be one with multiple versions, and it's not. I believe it's this one. So we're going to add a note again. And then I'm going to go back to the report library. And if I right-click and I say Show Versions, I see other versions. So this is a report that doesn't have a comment. So if I click on Copy, because it knows that there is a comment out there attached to one of the reports, I'm going to select the report that I added it to, click OK, and it's going to warn you that if you have existing notes, it's going to override them. When I click OK, now I have my note that says Add a Note, which is the one I just entered on the previous version of the report. Makes it nice and month end. You're not constantly re-entering those notes. When you export reports to Excel, which I'll hit the button without actually doing it, you can tell it to include the comments. If you unmark it, obviously they're going to be excluded from the export. The report's going to export to the directory in which I had already set up. I can change it. I can change the name of the report if I have different versions. And I can include or exclude any of these options down here at the bottom, whether it's headers and footers, formatting, or that kind of thing. And the one thing that I want to make sure we at least touch on, because we are almost out of time, is one quick thing. There is security. It's based on user. You can also put passwords on building blocks or the report definition so users can't change them. They could copy it and save it as a new name, but they can't change it, so your original one is there. The missing account analysis report that I mentioned, you can access it from the report definition window. If you go to Tools, Missing Account Analysis, it goes out in all building blocks and reports all missing accounts, account groups. If you've got department or divisions and those are missing, it will include that as well. So if I were to go down here and look at, this is the row definition I'm using, and these are the accounts it says that it's missing. I can access the row definition from here to work on adding accounts that I may have missed. Now, some accounts you may have left off on purpose, but it is going to tell you these accounts are not on there. And the last thing that I want to make sure everybody's aware of is you can do a cash flow statement in Management Reporter. We typically do the indirect method. You can show the inflows and the outflows. You can reconcile it with your income statement, your balance sheet, and you can include activity, period activity for the beginning and ending periods. So what I'm going to do real quick is show you the report, the cash flow report, just so you know that you can do it. This is the row definition. So there is a default. If you have the default reports installed, you will have a default cash flow report. So it'll show you the row definition and the column layout. You could start with that and then add accordingly based on what you need. This one is actually set up using account categories. The key to part of this report, one of the big things, is your beginning and ending cash period. The piece that makes this work is there's a row modifier. And if I want the beginning period in the row modifier, I'm going to select BB for beginning balance. So I get the beginning balance of my cash account for the period I'm generating the report for. And then when you want to do your year-end cash, you're going to select the account modifier of /Y to give you the year-to-date total, or excuse me, the year-to-date balance, so that then you can validate that they are correct. One piece in your cash flow statement that also makes this work is some advanced coding in regards to what numbers are actually being displayed on your reports. So we've done some advanced formatting here to say that column B, which in this report is my period data, and then column E, which in my row definition, in my column layout, column E, so I'm displaying B and E. C and D are non-printing, but they're being used in the report. So if I go back to the row, you can see it says that column E is actually going to display the result of column C. If it doesn't make sense, I don't expect it to. It is some advanced coding that we do to make reports display data the way it needs to be displayed. And that's what this is showing here, that we're doing some using account modifiers and then doing some advanced placement in regards to how our cash at the beginning of the period is being displayed. So it's right at 2, or actually we're a little after, I apologize.
There are a couple more questions that we'll try and get to. If Robert Rate, I'm going to unmute you if you want to ask your question here real quick, whenever you're ready. Robert?
Did you unmute him?
Yes, I think he might not be there. All right, well, we'll get to some other ones.
Okay.
There are a few more. Can you add a graph to the bottom of your report?
Yeah, you can use the graph functionality from the like what we did here where we graphed it. That would display in the report when it's generated. I don't know that we can control where it shows.
Okay.
But I can double check.
Okay, perfect. And then does the latest version, CU15, allow links to a spreadsheet on a calculated column?
Yeah, so I believe what they're asking, oh, good question. So if I understand what they're asking, they want to know if when we export to Excel and it's a calculated column, if the data is going with it.
Yes.
I'll double check on that one.
Okay. And then we'll do one more here. How do you run reports every Monday, export to Excel, and put in your folder?
You cannot export it to Excel automatically. All we can do is export it to, or generate the report to the report library or to the web viewer. And then if we're sending the link out potentially to an end user, then they would be able to export it to Excel from either the report library or the web viewer.
Okay. And then we are running a little over, so we'll kind of wrap up here. If we did not get to your question, you can reach out to Tina. Our next GP, there's your information there. Our next webinar for GP will be on November 10th from 1 to 2. And then currently there are 2 promotions going on, 20% off Rockton software through the end of October. And then K-Commerce is doing first 3 months of hosting charges free through December 2016. So Thanks everyone for joining us. And then if you do have any questions, there's Tina's information once again. And then we will send out a copy of this webinar to everyone as well the next day. So you can look for that as well. So thank you everyone.
Thank you.